Welcome to our X-Men Dark Phoenix spoiler discussion. I want to have a discussion about this film, and if you haven't seen the movie and you're trying to avoid spoilers, this is not the video for you. If you're not going to see the movie, or if you don't care, stick around, because a lot of times when it comes to these kinds of movies, I will always tell y'all, don't be spoiled. When you go see, Endgame, don't be spoiled, or a specific kind of movie I review. Here, I'll be honest with you. If you don't want to be spoiled, leave. But if you don't care, it doesn't matter. This movie was not good, okay? And the spoilers are not going to ruin the movie. The movie will ruin the movie. And it's crazy because since I saw the review that I put out, since I put out my review and others have put out their reviews, I haven't seen a single positive review about this movie. Nobody likes this movie that I know, and that's kind of bad. And that really sucks considering that it could have been great, and it just falls off a cliff. So let's talk about it here. The good and the bad. There's not very much bad. Joining me to discuss this, welcome back. He was here a couple days ago for the Terminator discussion. Laughing Stock Media and Laughing Stock Cinemas, Mike.
Hey guys, I'm ready to talk about this movie as I'll ever be because, wow, I can't believe how bad it was.
It's just, what's weird about the movie is it's not just like a bad story. Like Simon Kinberg, who produced the previous films and actually wrote the previous films, I often wonder now, like, did Bryan Singer take Simon Kinberg's script and just get like a red pen and just erase and rewrite everything? Because as a writer, I thought Days of Futures Past was written pretty well. Apocalypse was messy. Yeah. This was written like a damn third grader wrote this movie, and he also directed it so he couldn't really edit the script. This was really bad. There's bad CGI throughout the whole movie, bad cinematography, bad framing, bad, costuming. Like, it looked like somewhat like a low-budget fan film in some parts. It looked like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it came to the outfits that the X-Men were wearing, especially when it came to the scene where they encounter Jean Grey. Mystique, I think, is one of the most glaring examples. Just look at her makeup in every single movie other than this one, and look how bad it is. It's just... It almost looks like they CG'd it onto her, or they just, like, spray painted her blue, Jennifer Lawrence, because... Wow. I could even tell from the trailers that it was going to be cheap, but it's strange because this movie cost $200 million to make, so it shouldn't look cheap at all.
Where'd that money go?
Into Jennifer Lawrence's pockets, maybe? I don't know.
She died like a third of the way through the movie, and she was like being positioned as being the top babyface of this franchise, which makes no sense because Mystique is a villain, and yet they kill her off here, and then for some reason her dying literally melted Hank McCoy's brain to where he wanted to murder one of the students, which is not what Professor Xavier would ever teach him. Yeah. He wanted Magneto to go and kill Jean Grey, the girl who saved them from Apocalypse in the last movie, using the Phoenix power that she managed to get back in this movie. God, this movie sucks. God, it sucks bad. It's like Simon Kinberg didn't pay attention to not just Days of Futures Past, because he erases the happy ending in that movie completely. Remember, it's not a split timeline. People keep saying, oh, the timeline. It is not a split timeline. That is not what happened. And yet what's funny is Logan, Apocalypse, and this movie ignored Days of Futures Past. That should have just been the end. But with Logan, it was an Elseworld story, so we can kind of forgive that. I don't think this is supposed to be an Elseworld story. We have the mansion being renamed at the end, the Jean Grey School for Gifted Youngsters, which... Okay, so how do we get to 2000 X-Men with Patrick Stewart?
I guess they're going to have to take down that plaque in a few years and replace it with Charles Xavier's name again. But considering how egotistical they made him in this movie, I guess I wouldn't be too surprised.
Talk about Xavier?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that, for me, definitely is one of the biggest problems with this film. Not only Xavier is out of character, but, like, half the X-Men act like completely different characters,
Not just different characters from who they're supposed to be in the comics, but from previous movies.
Yeah.
Like, Hank McCoy, he's the big one. He didn't make any sense. Jennifer Lawrence, okay, again, Raven. Dude, she's not this inspirational superhero. She was a confused girl who almost ruined the timeline of X-Men 2 movies ago. You know what I mean? She was this kind of confused girl who was trying to kill off, Peter Dinklage or whatever. And now she's this, perfect leader, like even above Cyclops and Storm, who were supposed to be the leaders. But again, I get it; they're younger, yada yada yada. This whole Apocalypse in this movie were supposed to be like the coming of age story for the X-Men. We're supposed to find out how they became the X-Men would later meet in X-Men, X2, X3. And we got none of that. Cyclops is the same except more emo because his girlfriend died. Jean Grey is dead. And you have to have Wolverine come into the timeline in order to go back in time and change things. So I don't know how that's going to work out. We know he's still alive. They just screwed everything. They did not care. No. They did not care. Like, did they know that Disney was going to buy the damn Fox property and just say screw it? Like, I almost feel
like that's happening. Like, maybe there was chatter behind the scenes, with the executives that they knew a long time in advance that Disney was going to buy it, so they're just like, who cares? We'll just put out a horrible abomination of a movie so fans will be more excited about rebooting it when it comes to the MCU. But like you said, when it comes to them not caring and things being completely different from the previous films, it's almost like this movie takes place in its own separate timeline. Like, this movie is completely
like an Elseworld story.
Yeah, and it's like, it's supposed to be a sequel to the others, but everyone...
And a prequel.
And everyone acts completely different, and another problem I had when it came to Professor X is, like, in all of the other films, they present him, even in X-Men 3... they present him as still being relatively heroic and, he made a mistake, but in this film, like, they basically set him up as the villain for half the movie, like, he's just acting completely egotistical. They're taking that whole, like, air of ambiguity about, like, his morals in the comics and some of the cartoons.
Magneto was more likable, more of a hero.
It's crazy, and even then, like, Magneto was acting more, or Michael Fassbender was acting less like Magneto and more like David from Alien Covenant in this movie,
Oh, God. Well, it's just funny because they had these different elements of different storylines. Like, they had Genosha, they had the Moore Island collars, and they had the Dark Phoenix saga, but they never did any of them right. Like, the dude, like, they didn't even go all the way with Moore Island, and... The mutants that were introduced in Genosha were just like nobodies and didn't even get any screen time. And then like the Dark Phoenix story, this is their second attempt at doing this, and they botched it again, man.
And it's even worse this time.
It's even worse. X3 was better. At least we had the Juggernaut and Kitty Pryde and Colossus doing cool stuff in that movie.
And Kelsey Grammer is a much better beast than this movie.
And it's too bad because I like Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah, but again, it didn't even feel like he was playing the Beast, except for the scenes with the terrible CGI transformation, and even then he acted like completely out of character. He acted like a monster instead of the character who has had, 30 years of build-up so far? Not to mention all these characters in this movie are in like their 50s and 60s, and they still look like they're in their 30s. Like,
well, you mean 20 years, but you're right. In the sense of, based on the timeline, you're right. Professor X. Now, James McAvoy did look older, but not as old as he should have looked. And Magneto looked like this, handsome. Michael Fassbender's a very handsome man. You know what I'm saying? A guy, a magazine cover guy, right?
He basically just looks like he hasn't had a haircut in a little bit. That's about it. He's not Ian McKellen.
He's not Ian McKellen. He's not old gay Magneto yet, bro. We haven't evolved to that. So I guess if this movie's in 92 and X-Men is in 2000, that's 8 more years. I highly doubt that they're going to morph like the black and white Michael Jackson video into freaking... No, it was bad, man. They should have just set... I heard it was going to be in the 90s, but I was thinking like 1990, but even then, it's like...
No. This was 17 years after, I think, 1985, or 1975 when Jean Grey moved in or something like that. So it was in the early 90s, But, like, speaking of messed up continuity, how about how, like, half the characters' powers don't make any sense in this movie either? Like, there's so many scenes where characters' powers either work completely differently than every other movie they've been portrayed in, or that...
Oh, God. Like, are you talking about how Cyclops can use a mirror to, like, reflect...
Yeah, there's that, for example.
You can't do that. It would destroy the entire mirror.
But even worse is
At least
that
I think it would.
even worse, though, I think, is when they seemingly thought that Storm was Iceman. Like, for example, do you remember that scene in the movie where they're at the shitty party
he
that's
wants
outside,
ice.
and she creates ice cubes in the guy's drink. And it's like, how the fuck did she just do that? That's impossible, she's not Iceman.
Well, because she can create hail.
But she can't create perfectly, like, square cubes of ice just out of nowhere, Like,
well, now she can, Mike.
And then
Girl power.
And then when they're in space, too. When they're in space, and she, like, is able to control the ice in space to seal up the spacecraft.
I was like, wait a minute, I thought she only had powers that would work on Earth. It was the weather of Earth.
And also,
what about the fact that Nightcrawler is the only one that wears a helmet and everybody else can survive in space?
Yeah, that was another thing. Jean Grey is just floating out in space with the ship, like, torn apart. Why isn't she being sucked into the vacuum? And also, why isn't she dying immediately because she can't breathe? Why isn't Quicksilver dying?
What about those? I know, right? Even though he's fat, he still die. What about those terrible, terrible villains that were chasing the Phoenix Force around the galaxy?
The Not Skrulls?
The Not Skrulls and the Not Groot. It looks like Groot in a couple. It was dumb, bro. So they show up. Groot. And I'm thinking, okay, they want to destroy the Phoenix. That's what they want to do.
Yeah.
But instead, like, Jessica Chastain, who she went around saying she plays a sophisticated character. Now, you play kind of a dumbass, one-dimensional character.
Literally, anyone could have played that role. They didn't need Jessica Chastain, who is horribly miscast.
Well, I was going to say, it's dumb because the idea was to take the powers to destroy the Phoenix, but instead she just wanted the powers of the Phoenix. So
they were basically a rip-off of the Hellfire Club, but they already did the Hellfire Club.
They already did it
in X-Men First Class, which was way better. They had Kevin Bacon.
That's what I'm saying. Kevin Bacon is always good. You know what this was? Jessica Chastain's portrayal of Vuk is what I was worried that...
I didn't even know that was her name. She was so generic.
They never said her name. I had to look it up on IMDb. Vuk. Okay. Sounds like a venereal disease. But, okay, so... Jessica Chastain as Vuk is what I was worried Kate Blanchett as Hela was going to be. And it wound up, thankfully, Kate Blanchett and Taika Waititi, or whatever his name is, did a great job with Thor Ragnarok. But thankfully, that didn't happen there. Yeah, she was hot. And oh, dude. And then, like...
It's funny because I always thought that Jessica Chastain would look good with blonde hair. And then I saw her in this movie. I'm like, I guess I was mistaken.
Also, what about the fact that they had Professor Xavier retire? That's the most un-Xavier thing he would ever do. Like, he would never retire. Like, I understand, like, Mystique wanted to leave the X-Men and do her own thing, but Beast would never. Like, forget the comics. In this version, Beast is, like, super close to Xavier, and then in this version, he's, like, screaming at him, saying you were wrong, and then, like, they get into a fight, and then Xavier retires. Like, these characters would never do that. What is this guy thinking?
What about the scene where Jean Grey makes Professor X walk up the flight of stairs and his legs are like flopping around all over the place?
What was that about? Like, that was like I'm a bitch and I'm making fun of cripples? Like, is that what they were doing?
I almost thought they were going to do that iconic scene from the comics where Jean Grey, like, pushes him down the stairs. Because there is a scene in the comics where Wolverine, like, pushes Xavier up to the flight of stairs, and he's like, I know your true weakness, Charles. Stairs, and he pushes him down them, because he can't stop himself.
That's fucked up, bro. Wait, was this Brock Lesnar and Zach Gowen from 2003 SmackDown, bro?
It might as well have been.
I remember my ex-landlord's husband... used to tell me, I don't like Brock Lesnar. He pushed one-leg man downstairs. That shit used to kill me when he used to say that. Man. Okay, but also Cyclops, dude, Cyclops is so vanilla.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting that he's such a vanilla character in every portrayal of him outside the comics. He's kind of vanilla in the comics, but he's kind of likable. Yeah. But here, he was nothing, dude. He was like second fiddle throughout the whole thing.
He's supposed to be a leader, but in this movie he was basically just Jean Grey's, like, lapdog, He was whipped the whole movie. He's like, nah, you just murdered Mystique, but it's all good, you didn't mean to do it, right? Yeah, I did. I loved it when I did it. Oh, it's okay.
And boy, did they keep the camera on. That whole scene. Mystique is sitting there like that was a terrible death. It was like on the level of like Dark Knight Rises with freaking Talia al Ghul.
Yeah.
My fathers will have revenge. I will keep talking for a long, long time.
It's like she forgot that she was supposed to die, and then she was like,
but this
"Oh
here-
yeah," and then she died.
Here she just went. I don't know if she was possessed by the Exorcist or. Man, this movie sucks.
Hank. I know I've kind of cucked you for like the past 30 years, but I love you, Hank.
Were they planning to make another movie after this before the Fox purchase? Because I don't see how. This is like, I don't want them to make another one. I mean, obviously Kevin Feige is going to. Obviously, Kevin Feige's gonna, reboot everything. Yeah, everything's gonna get rebooted. Everything. We're gonna have new actors, new everything. Yeah. Which makes me sad, but at the same time, it is now necessary.
After this movie, it's necessary because, like, up until this point, I was like, screw it. I don't care about the continuity. Just open up a portal and have Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy be in the movie.
I don't even want that anymore, man.
After this movie, I'm just like, you know what? They're all ruined. This movie tainted them to such a degree that you just have to remove them from existence, And the thing is, like, for me, where they really should have just ended it was in X-Men 2, where they had the cameo from all the X-Men, like, in that door. Remember? Like, he opens the door, and he's like, oh, why don't they have the other X-Men in the mansion? And they, like, close the door so that they don't have to be in the movie. That's where it should have ended. That's where, in my mind, I'm going to pretend it ended, and this is going to be like Crystal Skull for me, where I'm just going to pretend it never happened.
Well, I'm going to pretend this or Apocalypse never happened. I mean, to me,
Apocalypse makes this makes Apocalypse look like X-Men 2.
I agree with that, and I think the proper ending to this franchise is either Logan or Days of Futures Past. Everything after that, it just shouldn't even be. It should be struck from canon. Like, this didn't irritate me. This movie did not anger me as much as Last Jedi, but I think the reason for that's because Last Jedi was chapter 2 of an obvious 3-chapter arc. This is supposed to be the end of the X-Men, and man, did it suck. I mean, just did you find the movie boring? Because I didn't find it boring. I just found it very uninteresting, especially when it's over and you're like, that was a waste of time.
There were points where I definitely thought it was boring only because of the pacing, but it was a combination for me of boredom, shock at how bad the movie was, and just, like, annoyance and, I don't know, general disgust. Like, half the movie I'm just thinking of, this scene could have been actually impressive if it was, like, well shot, if there was, like, a good score, if they didn't have such horrible actors in some of these scenes, And honestly, like, most of the actors are good. Although, I mean, I'm going to say something I guess might be a little bit... I don't know if it's controversial to say this, but, like, when it comes to Jean Grey, when it comes to... I forget her name. Sophie Turner.
Jean Grey.
Yeah, I just don't know if she's
Oh, you mean the acting?
I don't know if she's really suited to play Jean Grey.
She was good in this movie. I thought she was good in this movie.
She was good at points when they actually let her, like, emote, but, like, the way that she acts, like, you go and watch Game of Thrones, for example, and she's one of the main characters, she has
she's good in that.
Yeah, she has a more reserved way of acting, though, and, like, you can tell watching her in this movie, like, she's usually more quiet and reserved, so when they try and make her do certain scenes, I feel like it just doesn't work at all. But, like, compare her performance... I mean, even look at, like, X-Men Apocalypse. Again, I know that a lot of people don't like it, but I think that they're going to have maybe a better appreciation of it after this movie.
It's still got tons of problems.
But, like, when you see the last scene, for example, when she, like, walks up and does, like, the Phoenix thing and, like, defeats Apocalypse, like, that's an epic scene, and then you look at this... And there's not even a single scene that's even half as good. And that was from one of the crappy X-Men movies. So, yikes.
Yeah, this was not a very good movie. Yeah, if I ever I wouldn't even recommend X-Men fans go see this movie, dude. Like, skip this fucking movie and never watch it.
Watch it on Redbox or Netflix if you can, if you don't feel like watching something good. The Dolby Atmos audio was good. That's one of the few things.
That's always. I mean, that's well. I guess not. You know what? I'm actually surprised considering that the movie had a bunch of technical, like the ADR work, like the scene in the bar where Vuk is talking to Jean Grey.
Yeah.
There's the scene where she talks and her mouth does not match up with what she said.
Yeah,
I
couldn't
how
tell
could they
if
let that
was,
go?
I couldn't tell if that was just like my screening or not. It was
No, that was me too. How could they let a mistake like that make it to a big budget movie?
They just didn't care.
And then like the CGI when the ship is leaving the X base and like you see the when it
Yeah.
opened up, like the basketball court opening up was cool, but it looked like something out of the Star Wars special editions in '97, bro. Like the shoehorned in Millennium Falcon scene amongst this beautiful 70 millimeter beautiful movie, and then you've got that crap.
Maybe they just spent so much money on the original ending, and then they were kind of forced to change it because of Captain Marvel. Basically they already had the
no, they were forced to change it. They were forced to change it because of the early screenings got bad reports.
Well,
that's
they
what I
had
read.
like 3 different reshoots for this, and like the most recent.
I heard they had one recent reshoot, but okay, continue your story.
The most recent one from the reports I've been seeing is that basically the ending of this movie was a lot like the ending of Captain Marvel, where she like flies into space and she like destroys alien ships and stuff. And they were originally going to have Skrulls in the movie instead of like whatever this not Skrull race is, and because of Captain Marvel basically doing that, they end up just changing it to where we have like the whole train sequence, which I thought was terrible. Like, look at the effects. Like, look at Storm's lightning, for example. It almost looks like something you can do in iMovie. Like, some of the effects were just so bad, and I wonder if it's because they spent so much money on the original ending that they had no money left over for CG, and they just gave us what we have here.
No, it did feel like they ran out of money. I mean, even the costume for Mystique, and it's $200 million. So, where did that money go? I'm like confused. Oh, whatever. This movie sucks. I suggest you skip it. Any final thoughts?
This gives me new appreciation for X-Men 3 and Origins Wolverine.
I don't know if this is worse than Origins. It might be. I think, I don't know, man. As far as the main X-Men movies, not the Wolverine ones, this is the worst one.
Oh, by far.
Without question.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much. And check out Laughing Stock Media and Laughing Stock Cinema. And I'll talk to y'all next time.
See you later.